You're kidding, I said. My voice came out flatter than I expected, barely above a breath, but inside it felt like something ruptured all at once. No slow crack, just pressure giving way. Owen didn't flinch. No, he said calmly, I'm not. He stood behind my desk like he owned the space already, hands tucked casually into his pockets, posture relaxed in that way men get when they think the hard part is over. The slick haircut, the expensive blazer tailored just enough to look intentional, all of it felt like a costume he'd stepped into after watching too many leadership seminars. I stared at him, really looked, and felt the weight of it settle. You're firing me? He shook his head slightly. I'm making a change. The board is aligned. I let out a single short laugh, more air than sound. The board you rebuilt 3 weeks ago? He didn't answer. His eyes flicked briefly to the door, where a too young assistant hovered, pretending to check her tablet while clearly waiting to escort me out. My name is Kate Desmond. I'm 42 years old. I live in Port Towns, Washington, and until about 10 minutes ago, I was the chief operating officer of Tideway Transport. Owen cleared his throat, as if resetting. We're pivoting, he said. Leaner operations, faster execution, new perspectives. You know how these things go. I didn't. For 17 years, I'd been the ballast keeping this company upright. While Owen was still a frat boy learning how to fail upward, I was handling dock disputes, negotiating lease extensions, smoothing over labor issues before they exploded. I never needed applause. I needed things to work, and they did, because I made sure of it. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He'd already moved on. I turned back to my desk and picked up the only thing that mattered, a black and white photograph of our grandfather standing at the original dockyard, one hand resting on a rusted crane, eyes tired but steady. Kate, Owen said, softer now, you've been here a long time, but it's time to let someone else lead. I slid the photo into my bag. You're replacing me with the Axis line guy. Gavin Murray, he said, like it was supposed to impress me. He's done remarkable things in global logistics. He's burned through 3 companies and walked away richer every time. Owen didn't respond, just gave me that rehearsed expression, concern layered over disappointment, like he'd practiced it in the mirror. I stood, smoothed my blazer, and met his eyes. You have no idea what you've just done. His jaw tightened. Don't complicate this. I stepped past him and paused at the door. Dad warned me not to rely on this place, I said. He was right. Owen blinked. What does that mean? But I was already gone. In my car, I sat for a long moment staring across the water at the Tideway terminal. Gray cranes lined the bay like sentries, unmoving, familiar. 5 years ago, I'd quietly purchased the land beneath Docklands 4 and 5 through a shell entity. The leases were short. Renewal was coming. Owen didn't know. He could bring in consultants, restructure the board, play CEO all he wanted, but he didn't own what actually mattered. Not yet. I started the engine and drove away. The photograph lay on the seat beside me. It was the only thing I took. Everything else I left by choice. The morning after I was fired, I sat on my porch with a mug of black coffee and watched the bay wake up. From this distance, the freighters looked small, slow lines cutting through gray-blue water. A gull cried overhead. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. It was the first morning in nearly 2 decades I hadn't opened my laptop before sunrise. I didn't know what to do with the quiet. The wood beneath my feet was damp. The wind smelled like salt, diesel, and pine. Solid things. My phone buzzed. Carla from Crescent Terminal. New guy already cutting corners. Safety protocols under review. You okay? I stared at the message longer than I meant to. I should have felt smug. I didn't. I typed back, thanks, and shut the phone off. The screen door creaked. My father stood there holding a paper bag that smelled faintly of cinnamon. Figured you hadn't eaten, he said. Is this pity or bribery? Just breakfast. We ate quietly, watching a barge slide through the channel. You'll be all right? He asked. I shrugged. I knew this was coming. You did, he said, then added, Owen's been trying to prove he's more than your little brother. Cutting you loose felt like strength to him. It's stupidity, I said. He didn't argue. You could have stopped it. I didn't vote for it, but you didn't stop it. He stared out at the water. I stepped back too far, he admitted. I know. I leaned on the railing. I don't need the title, I said, but I'm not shielding him anymore. His eyes sharpened. Meaning? The Docklands 4 and 5 leases expire in 78 days. I bought the land years ago. Rates are going up. He went quiet. I'm not destroying the company, I said. I'm just not holding it up while he dismantles it. That'll hurt them. Then they shouldn't have removed their support. He nodded slowly. There's more. Gavin's already skipping safety steps. If something goes wrong, it'll bury them. He rubbed his face. So what will you do? I finished my coffee. I'll let gravity handle it. 3 days later, the email arrived. Formal subject line, continuity request. Owen wanted my notes. Then legal followed up. My lawyer laughed softly. You don't owe them anything, and they know it. Rumors filtered in. Shifts cut, crews walking, safety ignored. I tried to detach, but when Carla messaged about insurance inquiries, something clicked. That night, I called my lawyer. We formalized the new lease terms. She didn't question it. The next morning, after dropping off the paperwork, I walked past the Port Authority gates and looked toward Dockland 5. Fewer workers than there should have been. New security. Inside, I knew crews were stretched thin and maintenance delayed. The spare parts inventory hadn't been updated. I'd seen the export logs. Everything was running thinner and faster than the infrastructure could handle. A week ago, that would have sent me straight into crisis mode. Now, I just watched. The silence broke that evening when a call came in, an 1800 number I didn't recognize. Miss Desmond, the voice on the other end said, "This is Nate McIntyre with Harbor Mutual. I'm the Risk Compliance Director handling Tideways policy. What can I do for you, Mr. McIntyre?" We had a question come up during a review. There was a recent leadership change at Tideway, and we noticed some inconsistencies with their property records, specifically concerning the land titles under Docklands 4 and 5. I see. We understand you were involved in past lease negotiations. Yes. Are you able to confirm who currently owns those properties? I can, I said calmly. That would be me. Silence, then a quiet, I see. If it helps, I added, I've recently begun preparing new lease terms. That would help a great deal, he said, because the company's new leadership has been under the impression they still have 10-year guaranteed rights. They don't, I said. That clause expired last quarter. Understood. He thanked me and hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time afterward. It had finally begun the unraveling. Owen thought he could burn the old system down and build something flashier in its place. But what he didn't realize, not yet, was that the foundation wasn't his to tear apart. I owned it, and I had just decided it was time to renegotiate at full market value. No discounts, no favors. I wasn't cleaning up after him anymore. I wasn't his safety net. Let the empire he thought he controlled figure out what it's like when the ground beneath it shifts. Let him scramble. 2 weeks after that insurance call, I started noticing patterns, not on paper, in behavior. Owen stopped trying to contact me directly. The polite requests dried up. The legal pokes faded. It got quiet. Too quiet. It wasn't relief I felt. It was instinct. I've worked in logistics long enough to know when something's moving under the surface. So I went looking. That morning, I drove down to the county land records office. I told the clerk I was researching neighboring parcels around Dockland 4, made up a line about potential zoning overlaps. She shrugged and handed me the terminal. I typed in a few coordinates, then I narrowed the dates. 90 days back. Nothing. I widened it. 6 months. A few filings popped up. Shell corporations with names like Baystream Holdings and Horizon Shell North LLC. But one name kept repeating, Oceanus Development. It didn't mean anything to me at first. Then I checked the applicant on the permits. The listed representative, Oliver Desmond. Owen. I sat back in the plastic chair and stared at the screen. Oceanus Development had filed permits to build logistics infrastructure, new cargo terminals, rail spurs, even road expansions on land not owned by Tideway, along corridors Tideway had spent decades developing. And it got worse. The permits mirrored our routes, Seattle to Anchorage, Coos Bay to Ensenada, the same customer lanes I'd spent years solidifying. Owen hadn't just fired me, he was trying to cannibalize the entire company. I asked the clerk for hard copies, drove home, and called a private investigator I knew from a dry dock fraud case 5 years ago. His name was Clint. He sounded half asleep when he picked up. "Haven't heard your voice since that Singapore container insurance mess." "I've got something different," I said. "I need to know who's behind Oceanus Development. Deep dive, financials, investors, the whole thing." He whistled. "Someone's got your attention." "Just follow the smoke," I said. Clint didn't disappoint. A week later, he emailed me a folder. Inside were photos, business cards, and screenshots from pitch decks. One showed Owen speaking at a marina networking conference, bragging about a new disruptive cargo model that leveraged decades of underutilized maritime infrastructure. Except the infrastructure wasn't underutilized. It was mine. Another file showed Owen's investor packet, a full-color PDF with graphs and forecasts. One section laid out a streamlined operations model that mirrored the systems I'd created at Tideway: the staggered offload rotations, the seasonal drift buffers, the hybrid crew protocols for bad weather. He hadn't even changed the terminology. It was a carbon copy. He hadn't just tried to push me out, he was trying to replicate me, stripped down what I'd built and repackaged it as innovation. I closed my laptop slowly. This wasn't about family anymore. This was theft. And worse, it was betrayal dressed up as strategy. He was trying to bankrupt Tideway by making it look bloated and outdated. Then he'd swoop in with Oceanus, buy the scraps, and present it as progress. Clean house, modernize, sell it to investors as bold thinking. But the bones of it, the veins, the soul, all mine. I called my lawyer. "He's repurposing proprietary systems," I said. "We never patented everything, but there are enough unique operational blueprints to make a case." "Start documenting," she replied. "We'll need a timeline and records of authorship. Emails, notebooks, directives, anything that shows your systems originated with you." "I have all of that." "Then let's put it in a folder." I went to the cabinet, pulled out the red binders, and started laying everything out across my dining table. 17 years of notes, schedules, email printouts, time-stamped drafts, safety rollouts with my name at the bottom. As I worked, I thought about Owen in his corner office, still thinking this was a game he could win. But it wasn't a game anymore. It was war. He came at me like I was a stepping stone, thought he could erase me from the family business and walk off with the blueprint. But he forgot one thing. I'm not just the person who kept the lights on. I'm the one who built the wiring. And I'm the one who knows where it leads and what happens when you cut the wrong cord. It started with a voicemail from someone I never expected to hear from again. "Kate," the voice said, hesitant, "it's Jeremy Talbot. I used to be on the board, as you know. Look, this is unofficial, but we need to talk." I sat on the edge of my bed, phone pressed to my ear, heart thudding. Jeremy had always been one of Dad's old guard, practical, cautious, a little gruff. He stepped down 2 months ago for health reasons, right after Owen took over. I didn't think I'd hear from him again. I called him back that afternoon. "Jeremy." He sighed into the phone. "I've been hearing things, Kate. Lease term, panic project rumors, and something about a shadow company. Oceanus Development," I said. "That's Owen, isn't it?" "Yes." There was a long pause. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "He's trying to gut the company and walk away with the prize. He's already filed permits, and I have documents showing he's been pitching investors using Tideway systems. Mine." Jeremy exhaled. "The board doesn't know." "They don't know yet," I corrected, "but I plan to change that." I didn't tell him everything, just enough to shake his confidence in Owen. A few permits, a couple screenshots, just enough to make him realize the ground was shifting. Jeremy had contacts on the board. He'd get them talking. But that wasn't the only call I made. That evening, I took the ferry to Seattle and met with Eliza Grant, VP of Strategic Development at Horizon Maritime. She used to be a rival. Now she might be the perfect ally. We sat in a quiet booth at a waterfront restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. I laid everything out: the lease terms, the collapse at Tideway, the betrayal, the ownership of Docklands 4 and 5. Eliza listened carefully, chin resting on one hand. You want us to, what? Buy the terminals outright.
I want Horizon to acquire the operational assets, I said. You'd lease the land for me at fair market rate. I get stable revenue, you get a streamlined regional hub, and we both get to watch Owen drown in the hole he dug. She smiled faintly. That's poetic. It's also smart. Tideway's brand is damaged. Their leadership is flailing, but their infrastructure still works, for now. If you move fast, you can salvage it. Eliza tapped her nails against the table. And what happens to the staff? You keep them, I said. The crews, the dispatchers, everyone worth keeping. You'll get loyalty like you've never seen. She nodded slowly. You'd run operations. As regional director, quietly, no headlines, just results. She laughed. You always did play the long game. Still do. We shook hands. That was all we needed, a handshake. The formal offer would come later. When I got back home, I started reaching out to old colleagues, discreetly. Carla first, then Ron from HR, then Manny, our lead mechanic at Northport. I didn't say much, just enough to plant seeds. If things shift, I told Carla, you might get a call from Horizon. They'll be looking for experienced hands. She paused. Are you behind this? Not officially, I said. Good, she said, because I'd follow you anywhere. By the end of the week, the phone was buzzing every day. People I hadn't talked to in months were reaching out. Heard you might have something in the works. Is it true Horizon's circling? Please tell me Gavin's on the way out. I didn't confirm or deny, just told them to keep their ears open and their resumes updated. I watched it happen in real time, Owen's house of cards trembling. He thought cutting me out made him the king, but he never understood where the real power lived. It wasn't in the title, it was in the people, the trust, the leverage. And now, one by one, those people were walking back toward me, not because I asked, but because they remembered who kept them safe, who ran the place right, who never needed the spotlight to make things work. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. Piece by piece, I was taking back everything he tried to steal, and I was handing it over, not to him, not to the board, but to someone who actually gave a damn. Horizon had the capital, I had the roadmap, and Owen, he had no idea the walls were already closing in. Owen called an emergency board meeting on a Monday morning, standard location, top floor of the Tideway building, same conference room where Dad used to run meetings with a cup of burnt coffee in a yellow legal pad. Now it was all brushed steel, minimalist furniture and overpriced bottled water. Style over substance, that was Owen's specialty. The agenda read, current financial considerations regarding shipyard properties. I knew what that meant. He was about to pitch the sale of the company's terminals, probably spinning it as a move toward asset-light flexibility or modern strategic alignment. Translation, he needed money fast. I arrived 5 minutes early. No fanfare, just walked in, head high, legal folio under one arm. Owen was already seated at the head of the table, flanked by Gavin Murray, who looked like he was born in a LinkedIn profile picture. When I entered, both of them froze. Kate, Owen blinked, this is a closed meeting. Not anymore, I said, placing a slim folder on the table. Everyone here needs to see what's inside. The room shifted, you could feel it. Unease, confusion, curiosity. No one authorized your presence, Gavin said stiffly. Good, I said. That means you didn't have time to shred documents. I turned to the board. 6 members, including 3 Owen had appointed when he restructured last quarter. The others, long-timers, people who remembered when Tideway was still a 2-dock outfit in a rain-washed cove. Jeremy Talbot, seated near the end, gave me the slightest nod. I opened the folder. Inside, you'll find copies of development permits filed by Oceanus Development, a shell company registered under Owen's name. These documents show intent to build a competing shipping network using Tideway's infrastructure, trade routes, and, conveniently, the client base our family has spent 60 years building. Murmurs. Papers rustled.
Page 4, I continued, includes screenshots from Owen's investor pitch. You'll notice sections lifted directly from Tideway's operational manuals, verbatim. The staggered rotation model, that's mine. The emergency load dock escalation tree, mine. His so-called innovative redundancy logic, that's the safety protocol I wrote after the Tyree incident in 2018. Owen stood. This is outrageous. I raised a hand. Sit down, Owen. He didn't, so I turned to the board. Last month, I received inquiries from the company's insurance carrier, Harbor Mutual. They were surprised to learn Tideway doesn't actually own the land beneath Docklands 4 and 5. I do. That lease expired. I filed updated terms at full market value. A board member named Riley, one of the newer ones, flipped to the last page of the packet and frowned. These rates would sink our quarterly forecast. Correct, I said, and I'd advise you not to rely on Owen's plan to sell the terminals, buy them back through Oceanus Development, and pretend it was all a bold rebrand. Jeremy cleared his throat. Kate, are you offering an alternative? I am. I reached into my bag and placed a second folder on the table. Horizon Maritime, they've submitted a formal offer to acquire the operational assets of Tideway's terminal division. They'll lease the land from me at a sustainable rate and retained current staff under a streamlined leadership structure. Owen's voice rose. You're trying to gut the company. No, I said coolly. You did that the day you fired me and tried to duplicate what you didn't understand. The room went quiet. Then someone else spoke for the first time. Dad. He'd been sitting near the corner, silent, watching. Owen, he said, voice low but steady, is this true? Owen looked around, searching for an ally. Gavin shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. Owen, Dad repeated. Finally, Owen spoke. I was protecting the company. Kate was holding it back. I had a vision. A vision that involved stealing from your sister? Dad's voice cracked. Turning your back on the very people who built this place? Owen's jaw clenched. You always favored her. No, Dad said. I trusted her. The board called a vote. 6 minutes later, it was over. Owen was removed as CEO. Gavin's contract was terminated pending legal review. The board moved to accept Horizon's acquisition offer. No yelling, no drama, just votes and silence, and the sound of power changing hands. As Owen stood, pale and shaking, I met his eyes. I told you not to underestimate me. He didn't answer, just walked out, shoulders hunched like he couldn't believe what had just happened. When the room emptied, Dad stayed behind. We sat for a while, the sunlight from the bay painting long shadows across the table. I should have seen it, he said quietly. You did, I replied. You just didn't want to admit it. He nodded. You'll do good with Horizon. I'll do better than that, I said. I'll make sure people still have jobs, that the terminals run right, that what we built survives. He looked at me. You always were the smart one. I smiled faintly. Took you long enough to say it. We sat in silence, watching the freighters move out beyond the glass. A new tide had come in, and this time I was steering. 1 year later, I stood at the edge of Docklands 5, hands tucked into my coat, the wind off the Sound crisp and clean. The Horizon Maritime logo now hung above the old Tideway gates, sleeker font, brighter colors, but beneath the branding, the bones were the same. Cranes groaned into motion, cargo units swung from cables, and the horns of departing freighters echoed across the bay. And I was home, not entitled. I wasn't CEO or some puffed-up executive on a pedestal. My card said Regional Director of Logistics, but I still made rounds with the ground teams, walked the yard at dawn, double-checked safety logs with Carla, and slipped Manny a cinnamon roll every Friday like clockwork. They knew me, trusted me, and that was enough. Owen's ocean venture didn't survive past autumn. Once the board exposed his double dealing, word got around fast. Investors pulled out, permits were revoked, his shiny PDF decks were reduced to internet cautionary tales. The man who tried to outmaneuver me ended up selling a condo to cover legal fees. Last I heard, he was trying to pivot into consulting. I didn't ask further. Dad still called sometimes, not to rehash, but to talk about freight trends or how Horizon had repainted the maintenance hangars without using those awful corporate pastels. We weren't best friends, but we were talking again, and for us, that was something. More importantly, I stayed in touch with my niece and nephew. They'd been kept out of the politics, and when I brought them down to the docks last Christmas to show them the control tower, their eyes lit up like I'd handed them the keys to a spaceship. "Can you really see all the ships from here?" Ava had whispered. "All the ones that matter," I'd said. Now, as I stood at the pier, the morning sun rising behind a wall of steel containers, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Not revenge, not even triumph, just stillness. I had rebuilt something from the wreckage, and not for the spotlight. For the people who showed up at 4 a.m. in rain gear, for the welders who skipped lunch to patch a hull, for the dispatchers who memorized every tugboat captain's coffee order. The wind picked up, pushing hair into my face. I didn't brush it away. I just watched as a freighter eased into port, flags snapping, deck crew bustling. The system was working again. My system. And I didn't need my name carved into a plaque to know it. I turned and started walking back toward the terminal, the gravel crunching beneath my boots. Behind me, the ship let out a long, deep horn, steady and certain, just like the tide. I'd come back, not as a survivor, but as the one who never truly left.